All right, Shalom, Barakateh Hawa, Barakateh Hawa Shai. Just wanted to hit uh, pretty much this is a response to Apostle Tahar. His video, America is Found, as mentioned in the Bible. And pretty much, you notice a lot of these devils nowadays, they're starting to make videos mentioning America. Maybe people will believe it now since Esau, the so-called white man, is saying it. For years we've been saying it, we've been teaching it, and people doubted it. They, looked down on us, thought we were crazy. But now that the so-called white man is putting the information out, maybe now they'll believe it. But I just wanted to land back off of Apostle Tar's video. I'm not sure how long this is going to be, because we get ready to go out to camp out here in San Francisco in a little while. So I'm going to try to get as much as I can, and if whatever I can get, Lord's will, I could do it, another time. Can you brothers hear me? If you brothers can hear me loud and clear, let me know. I'm going to start off with a scripture in the Apocrypha, because Apostle Tahar mentioned that the prophet Daniel didn't know or didn't understand the visions that he saw, and he's correct on that. And I have a scripture to start off with, that I wanted to read, to further prove. He showed it to you in the book of Daniel 12, but I wanted to show another scripture to further prove that the statement that Apostle Tahar made is correct, according to the scriptures. And this is in the Apocrypha, in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 12th chapter. I'm going to start at the 8th verse. All right, the water brothers, a shalom to the Akim and the Akwath in the comment boards. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 12 and verse 8. This is the prophet Ezra speaking concerning the vision that the Lord showed him. And he said, "Comfort me then, and show me thy servant the interpretation and plain difference of this fearful vision, that thou mayest perfectly comfort my soul. Excuse me. For thou hast judged me worthy to show me the last times." And he said unto me, "This is the interpretation of the vision. The eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel." So now this eagle represented the Roman Empire, and like the angel is telling Ezra that was that eagle was the fourth beast in the book of Daniel, and that vision that Daniel saw was in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, and that fourth beast represented the Roman Empire, and the reason why I went here was to prove that point. But also, when you read on down, it says, I read it again, "The eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel, but it was not expounded unto him. Therefore now I declare it unto thee." So the Lord didn't expound to Daniel what that meant. So Daniel didn't understand that vision that he saw. That's why the thing that Daniel said was, he said, "My cogitations much trouble me," which means his thoughts in his mind, because the thoughts in his mind that he saw in the visions, it messed his head up, because he didn't understand what was going on. Because he saw all these different empires coming up, but he didn't know that they were empires. He saw them in the form of beasts, and he saw at the end how the Lord destroyed, these different empires, but they were, like I said, they were all in the form of a beast, So all the things that he saw was from the time of the Greeks, from the time of the Assyrian Babylonian Empire, all the way up until today in America, the destruction of America. So the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, is very important to understand, as far as to know and understand what prophecies are speaking about. You know, so when he saw these things, the Lord pretty much in a nutshell showed Daniel the empires, the world empires that were going to rule, and the end of these empires being destroyed by the second coming of Yahushai in the chariots with the angels. You know, and that's what he saw. You know, but Daniel did not understand it. He didn't understand that vision. That's why we read here in the book of 2nd Ezra 12 and 11, the eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of that brother Daniel, which was the fourth beast, but it was not expounded unto him. Therefore now I declare it unto thee. So it wasn't explained to Daniel what that meant. But now the Lord is explaining it to Ezra, because during the time of Ezra, which Ezra was on the scene roughly around 400, 500 BC in that time frame, and the Roman Empire was going to be coming into power a few hundred years in the future from there, you know, and that was the last beast that Daniel saw. But in the vision, when Daniel saw the fourth beast, he saw a little horn come out of that fourth beast. And that little horn represented America, which is the revival of the ancient Roman Empire with all its allies. You know, that's why it spoke about the 7 heads, and it also spoke about the 10 horns, which the 10 horns represent that union of the European nations that came together, that consisted of the EU, the European Union, which when it was first created, beginning in March of 1957, but they got their charter in January of 1958. It was called the EEC, or the European Economic Community, and that was very important to know in history, because that was the union of that fourth beast coming back into power, you know, to fulfill prophecy. Now, this is the book of Revelation, chapter 13. And the point is, I'll start around 11. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the sea. Because when you go back before this, when you go back to Revelation 13 and 1, it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. Now, keep in mind that the Apostle John actually seen this beast coming up out of the sea, and he didn't understand what it meant, you know. So it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea. The sand of the sea, he was on the island of Patmos, looking into the sea, and that sea he saw was the Mediterranean Sea, which the scriptures call the Great Sea. And I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, those 7 heads and 10 horns, like I said, it was an actual dragon that he saw, actual beast, with actually 7 heads and 10 horns, and it says, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the names of blasphemy. So he actually saw this, but he didn't understand what it meant. What that meant was the whole power structure, you know, and political system, militarily and all that of the so-called white men, the Edomites, you know, which began with the Greeks, because they have a saying called civilization began with the Greeks. So what do they mean by civilization began with the Greeks? Meaning that was when Esau started taking power of the earth. You know, that was the shifting of the power from all the different nations to Esau, you know, that was going to bring about his end, you know. So that's where they started from the Greeks, because when the Greeks took over, the Greeks were Edomites that took on the custom and the nationality and identity of the ancient Greeks, which were from the seed of Yawan, which came out of the seed of Japheth, which is Japheth. Okay, so that's the original Japhites were dark-skinned people. You know, they had braids and all of that, you know, tattoos and all of that they would paint themselves with, you know, and they had governed all of Europe, you know, and they had governed the islands, you know, of the Mediterranean Sea. But when Esau came in there, they pushed them out and adapted and took on their customs and their identity and so on and so forth. That's why today, when you speak about so-called Greeks, you know, they talk about, they show you pictures of so-called white people because they took on that custom. Same thing as the so-called Jews today. They took on the customs of Israel, of our customs, and called themselves Jews, but they call themselves Jewish today. All right. So going back, and those 7 heads of the beast were the Greeks, the Spanish, the Romans, the French, the Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain. That was the 7 heads, you know, and those were the 7 major empires of Esau's kingdom, beginning with the Greeks, you know. And when you go back and you research history, you see that there was wars between, you know, the Greeks and the Romans and all that, and with the Romans would have wars with the Gauls, you know, which were the so-called French, you know, and so on and so forth. The Germanic tribes, you know, some of them were Japheth, some of them were Edomites, some of them were you know, you had Jakes all up in there in that area too, you know. So you had a variety of different wars that these devils were fighting with each other, you know, to try to expand their kingdom, you know. And those other Germanic tribes and all that were fighting against Esau, you know, to keep their lands, you know. And the Romans weren't able to take them down because the Germanic tribes were skilled in guerrilla warfare, which the Edomites were not. They were just learned in formation, you know, formation battles, you know, with the shields, you know, and locking shields with each other. That's all they knew. They didn't know how to adapt to the guerrilla warfare. That's why they were getting taken out, you know. And they show you that in different movies. Centurion, which is a movie that Apostle Tahar was trying to remember, and that happens sometimes. You know the name of the movie, but sometimes it escapes your mind, you know. And then you had the Eagle, you know, and other movies. You had 300, which in the movie 300, I'm sorry, not 300, Gladiator. In the movie Gladiator, you know, they show you at the beginning that the Roman Empire was fighting those Germanic tribes, you know, to take them down. All right. All right. So now let's read on. It says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. So now in Revelation, the 13th chapter, is giving you the history of this beast that John saw, and is giving you the beginnings of the beast, and is giving you the ending of the beast. Now the beginning of the beast, it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. That leopard represented Alexander the Creep, which was the first king of Greece that ruled and governed over the Greek Empire. That was their first Greek king. Matter of fact, let me just get that real quick. In the book of First Maccabees, the 1st chapter and the 1st verse. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, which Kittim is, I believe, it's called Cyprus today. It was a island off of the coast, you know, off of the coast of in that region where Asia Minor was at, you know. I believe today it's called Cyprus, if I'm not mistaken. So came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. So Alexander the Creep was the first king of the Edomites that reigned over the Greeks, because prior to him, the Greeks, they had different city-states. You know, they weren't together. You know, they were all separated. You know, but he was the first one that actually brought them all together and to fight, you know, and to govern over that whole realm. Why? Because it was part of prophecy. All right. It says, it made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. Now, when you go to Daniel, the 8th chapter, and I'll just go straight to the point. Daniel, the 8th chapter, and the 20th verse, it says, the ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia, which is letting you know the vision that Daniel saw. The Lord gave him that understanding of that, you know, who they were, you know, who they were going to be, you know, because remember, Daniel was in the Babylonian Empire, you know, and the Babylonian Empire after a certain period fell to the Medes, and, well, actually to the Persians and the Medes. It was Darius the Mede that rolled up on Belshazzar, which was the son, which was actually the grandson, if I'm not mistaken, of Nebuchadnezzar. When you do the research, and he fell, to the Medes, but he was under the orders and the charge of Cyrus, which Cyrus was a Persian king, and it says, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia. See, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, which the king of Grecia was Alexander the Great. He was the first Edomite king to rule over that realm. Okay, it says, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, and that first king was Alexander the Great. All right, so that's just letting you know that was the beginning of Esau, the so-called white man, ruling, in an empire that really began that whole beast system. Because that was the first head of the 7 heads of the beast. That's why it said that the beast was red. You know why? Because the so-called white men, the Edomites, are really red. They're not white. That's what the name Edom means. It comes from the Hebrew word Adawam, which means red. So when John saw the vision, he actually saw this red beast, which represented Esau's power structure. Their military, their political system, religious system, and all of that. All right. So reading on, it says, and his feet were like as the feet of a bear. And they gave the prophecy here, the vision that John saw, was he saw the beginning of this beast and he saw the end of it. Now the end of it, that's why he spoke about the feet as the feet of a bear. The bear represents Russia today, because Russia is known as the bear. And Russia is going to be the empire that never joined forces with the ancient Roman Empire, which actually with the modern Roman Empire. They never joined forces with them. They're totally separate from the European and NATO, EU and NATO nations. So they're pretty much separated. Why? Because the Lord set it up that way, because Russia was going to be the nation that was going to bring the demise of America. Okay. So it says, and the mouth as the mouth of a lion, because the mouth of the lion represents the British Empire, the UK, mainly in England, because they're pretty much the mouthpiece. The Rothschilds run that. They pretty much run the world from that region there. You have what's known as the city-state of London, which is the financial capital of Esau's system. Governing over the world and creating policies and whatever else they do, with that section over there. So that's the mouthpiece, the mouthpiece of this beast system, is England, even though they're using America as the patsy, like the front man. Like you have, I'll give you an example. Like you have Trump today. People think that Trump is running things, but Trump is just a mouthpiece for the international bankers who are behind the scenes, All right, so it says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now the dragon represents the Roman Empire, So the Roman Empire, which is pretty much the whole beast system, is run by Satan. Satan is their power, But the Roman Empire, the Lord said that they were going to be strong as iron, so they get their power from that. And that's where you see the whole world today under the rulership of this American hegemony, this American empire, and they're running this government in this world as the Roman Empire ran theirs, through war, through infiltration, through mercenaries, through different political heads or puppets that they set up in these different governments, to take the resources from the people, and to lend these nations money to the point where they know that they won't be able to pay it back. So what is the other side of that? they will take their resources, their land, and all of that, and just set up a puppet leader to pacify the people, because they can't just go up in there and just take the stuff, because it will cause anarchy, or it will cause the people of the world to look, like what the hell y'all doing, in so many words. All right, so now it says, and I saw one of his heads as they were wounded to death. Now out of those 7 heads, the one head that was wounded was the head of the Roman Empire. Now the head of the Roman Empire started to be wounded, around the time where the different Israelite emperors started to rule. Like Marcus Aurelius, Commodus, and you had some that ruled before that, and eventually what happened was the power structure of the Roman Empire was transferred over to Israel, to the Israelites that ruled that region for a certain period of time. So at that time, beginning around the time of Marcus Aurelius, they started to fall, and Jake started to get up in there. Why? Because it was time for that beast to fall, because that was part of the prophecy. So it says, and I saw one of his heads as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. So now when you read the book of Revelation, the 20th chapter, the beast that was wounded came back into power. Now they were put in a situation to where they couldn't come out of that prison sentence, so to speak. They were it was like a seal that was put upon them for them not to be able to lie, to deceive, to rule, because the Lord had chopped their power structure. This is Revelation 20:1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Now this angel is Yahushai, because it said that he had the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Now let's go real quick to the book of Revelation chapter 1. All right, let's go to Revelation chapter 1, and I believe it's the 18th verse, if I'm not mistaken. It says, Revelation 1:18, I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. So be true, and have the keys of hell and of death. So Yahushua was the one that bound this devil, and set this seal upon them, so that they won't be able to deceive or lie anymore, because it was time for that head, the head of one of the heads of the dragon to be wounded unto death. It seemed like it was mortally wounded, but it just had to go to a corner somewhere and lick his wounds for a period of 1,000 years. And the great chain pretty much represented slavery, because Esau was pretty much in slavery during that time. They couldn't do nothing, It says, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. So this prophecy goes into when the Roman Empire fell, when it fully fell during 325 AD, during Constantine, which Constantine was a wicked Jake, that governed that section, because the empire was split into two. The so-called Holy Roman Empire was split into two, and I believe he ruled. The East. The East, where the eastern part of the empire was, which was called Constantinople, which later was renamed Istanbul, Turkey. Okay, so when that came to pass, that's when Esau was totally taken out of their power. True to the prophecy, and he said it was bound for 1,000 years. It says, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he shall be loosed a little season. Now when you look up that word shut up, it comes from the from the Greek klaao, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It says to shut up, metaphorically to cause the heavens to withhold rain, to shut up compassion so that it is like a thing inaccessible to one, to be devoid of pity towards one, to obstruct the entrance into the kingdom of heaven. So pretty much they were stopped from deceiving. They were stopped from deception. You know, they were taken out of that power seat, because when they came back into power during the Renaissance period, the first thing that they did was they deceived the whole world. And this is Revelation 20:7, the 7th verse. And when the 1,000 years are expired, meaning when his sentence was up, you know, when Esau's sentence was up, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. And that's what happened. They started slowly but surely coming out of that condition that they were in, and then they started taking over the strongholds of Europe. All right. It says, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. And what the first thing they did, they set up what was called the Renaissance period, which the word Renaissance means rebirth. And when they set up the rebirth was them coming back into power and taking us down, and taking all the strongholds of Europe, and erasing all the images and icons and frescoes and different paintings that were all throughout Europe. You know, and they took all that down and started telling the world that they were the Most High, that they were Yahushua, that they were the angels, that they were the people of the Lord and the great men and all that that ruled throughout Europe and all of that. They're everybody except for the devil and the Edomites, you know. So let's go back to Revelation 13:3. It says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And that's what happened. Everybody wondered after the beast. That's why everybody wants to be like the so-called white man. You see these gooks, they come over here, you know, they want to act and talk and live and dress just like Esau. You know, they want a piece of that pie because they look at him as being sweet Jesus. You know, they look at him as being somebody that is of worth and of value, because right now they got the power of the world, because that power was given unto them. They came out of their prison sentence, and when they came out of their prison sentence, what happened was they started taking over Europe. They started taking over that whole situation, and then after that, after they took it over, they started deceiving the world, and they came up under the then that's where the empire of the British Empire came into play. And out of the British Empire, they so-called America came out of that, because the so-called founding forefathers of America were kicked out of England because they were a bunch of criminals, and they came over here to break away from England, you know. And in the breaking away, that's what happened when the establishment of this eighth beast, or this little horn in the book of Daniel, came to pass. When America broke away from England and became their own separate empire. From there, they started building into an empire, which now today, globally, they're running the whole world. You know, that's where they have military bases all over the earth, all over the world. You know, and they're running their empire the same way that the Roman Empire was run. You know, that's where they hire mercenaries to go to war. You know, they have all different type of nations in their armies, in the military, you know, and they're spread thin, just like the ancient Roman Empire was. And if you look, if you type in on Google, if you type in what's the word I'm looking for, the similarities between America and ancient Rome, you'll see that everything parallels the same way that it did, you know, in the past. And then there was this book I got, you know, back home in Connecticut, that goes into how even the creativity of their art and all that started dwindling, you know. And you see that the creativity of America is everything is degenerated, demoralized, you know, and it doesn't even have any real substance or real talent like they did in the past. Why? Because this place is out of here, you know. The Lord said we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. You know, take balm for her, if so be she may be healed. This place is finished, you know, because we're coming to the end of the empire of America, which is the final leg of the Roman Empire, which is that final beast, which is that little horn in Daniel 7, which is the 8th beast in the book of Revelation 17. And if we have time, I'll go into that a little bit. All right. So now, let's go from there. Already read that. Okay. You know what? Let's just go right into Revelation 17, because Revelation 13th chapter, we read how the wound was. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back to Revelation 13, because it said that the deadly wound was healed, and the world wondered after the beast. Now let's jump down to the 11th verse. It says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." Now this beast represents America, because you have the 7 heads, and then you have the 1 head that came out of them, which was the 8th, which Lord's will hit that. So America is the 8th, pretty much the 8th head. You know, it was a beast with 7 heads, but then there was another head, you know, which is the 8th, you know, which came out of those 7 different empires of Esau. And they're run by who? By Esau, the Edomites. Because we're at the end of the world. Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So the 2 horns, the 2 horns like a lamb, represents their 2 power structures. They play on both sides of the fence. You know, they play in the Democratic and the Republican. You know, they act like they're a lamb, like they're really honest, but pretty much they're lying to the whole world. This is Psalms chapter 55, and I believe it starts at 20. Psalms 55 and 20, it says, "He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant." Because he'll make an agreement with you, but he won't keep the agreement. Why? Because he's the devil. You know, he's that serpent. He's that fork-tongued devil. It says 21, "The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords." So they'll act like they're benevolent. They'll act like they're lamb-like, you know, but they're nothing but wolf in sheep's clothing, you know. It said, "And he spake as a dragon," because they're fierce, you know. These devils, man, they look at Trump. Trump is that Trump juice got he's drinking his own juice. He's drunk off his own Trump juice, you know, and he's speaking with that fierceness like a dragon, because a dragon is known to be fierce and is also known to be very keen, you know. It says, verse 12, "And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him." See why? Because the American system, the American empire, is running this empire and this system the same way that the ancient Roman Empire ran theirs. Look at the similarities. Like I said, type in on Google, and on the Google search engine, and type in the similarities between America and Rome, and you're going to see that everything parallels each other, from the way that they fought wars, to their political system, to the way they set up their buildings, you know, to the legislative part of their kingdom, to their political system, and the way that they set up the Senate and all of that. It's all nothing but the ancient Roman Empire all over again. Matter of fact, let me get First Maccabees, the 8th chapter. I'm going to start at the first verse. I'm going to jump around. Not like the House of Pain. I'm just going to jump around a little bit. First Maccabees 8 and 1. "Now Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men," because that was the prophecy. It said that they would be strong as iron. It says, "And such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them." I'm going to jump down to verse 13. "Also that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom again they displace. Finally that they were greatly exalted. Yet for all this none of them wore a crown, or was clothed in purple, to be magnified thereby." Why? Because they didn't rule in a kingly manner. You know, whenever you had an empire or kingdom, you would have a king, and the king would sit on a throne, and then his sons after him, which were the prince or the princess, they would rule in their father's stead. But this empire That's right, brother Ira Shah, the Colosseum. That's right. But this empire was ruled different than any other empire because they didn't have kings that sat on thrones and their sons would be heirs after them. They did it in the manner that the scriptures explain in Daniel 7, where it says, verse Daniel 7:7, and this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now the diversity that it had was that the way that they ruled their government, or they ruled their empire, was through a thing called elections. You know, which they would have a president. Back then they were known as Caesars. You know, they would be elected, you know, every year or every 4 years, however they did it in the past. And it tells you that right here in the book of Maccabees, going back to 1 Maccabees 8 and 14. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house. See, then you have the senate house today. That's why it says in Revelation 13 that they exercised. That they had 2 horns like a lamb, you know, and the 2 horns was just 2 political systems that set up like the ancient Roman Empire was, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people. And that's what they try to say. They say they're consulting for the people, but they're not. They're consulting for themselves, and before that, they're consulting for the international bankers, which behind the scenes are running this world, this society, to the end they might be well ordered, and that they committed their government to one man every year, and that was the Caesar. Today they call them presidents, you know, which is president means first, if I'm not mistaken. Excuse me. Who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. See, so that's what's happening today. You know, the American Empire is being run the same way as the Roman Empire was run. All right, so I'm gonna hit a little bit in this Revelation 17. I was gonna start up at the first verse, but in the interest of time, I'm just gonna jump down to 6th verse. And I saw the woman. The woman represents America. All right, and Lord as well, like the Apostle Tara said, maybe somebody else would take over, you know, and do, you know, a video, you know, on that, you know, the edifying on that. But it says, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, which are the Israelites. In America, you see the history of this place, how they destroyed the North American Indians, how they destroyed the indigenous people of North, Central, and South America, Caribbean islands, how they destroyed the so-called Negroes, who were the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi in this country, you know, through slavery. It says, and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahushua, because the Lord's men came back over here in this side of the world, you know. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath 7 heads and 10 horns. And that beast that carried this woman, America, is those European nations, you know, because that's who America is being propped up by, because that's who she came out of, you know. She's sitting on top of them because she's doing all the same things that they were doing back then. And this society here, or America, is the one that's governing over the entire planet. You know, so all of those different beast nations, or the EU and the and NATO, the ones that's really the head of all of that is America, because no matter if the majority of those nations want to do one thing, if America wants to do something else, they're gonna go with what America says. You know, until the Lord turns their minds against this place to destroy it, because they're gonna get tired of this whole, you know. Get tired of a hole, man. It says, it's verse 8. The beast that thou sawest was and is not. Now this beast that the Apostle John saw was the Roman Empire. You know, because they were ruling during his time, but then eventually they fell. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, because they came out of Europe, and go into perdition because they were destroyed. Remember, the deadly wound was healed. You know, it says, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. And when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. So this is explaining to you that those 7 heads are 7 governments, pretty much, on which the woman sitteth, because she's using those different nations to govern over the world, right? It says, and there are 7 kings. So those 7 kings represent 7 empires. All right. It says, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen. Now, when you go back in the history, when the Roman Empire ruled, the Greeks fell, the Spanish fell, the French, Germania Major and Germania Minor. Those fell to the Roman Empire. Those empires there, you know. It says, and one is. Why? Because the Roman Empire was ruling during the time when John was on the island of Patmos, because they're the ones that committed him to that island. You know, they banished him to that island. It says, and the other is not yet come. The one that is not yet come is the British Empire, the UK, England. All right. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And from the time that they ascended out of that situation they were in and came into the Renaissance period, it's been a short period, you know, compared to eternity, you know. So they only been ruling for a short period of time, because remember, the Lord said that 1,000 years is one day to him, and one day is 1,000 years. All right. So to the Most High's eyes, they've been ruling what, maybe 500 years or so, or maybe less than that, or way less than that, you know. So that's just a short season. It says, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, because America came out of these 7 empires. It says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. Why? Because America is that 8th beast, and is of the 7. Why? Because it's of those 7 empires that rule. That's the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Right, and goeth into perdition, because they're going into destruction. So that's the judgment of America. So we're now at the point now where the Lord is bringing judgment, first verbally, and afterwards is going to be physical with the nuclear missiles and the laser beams from the chariots. So that's why we're out here prophesying on these streets, hitting them streets, putting that work in for Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, so that the Lord can fulfill His words and bring the destruction upon this place, because they were known to go into perdition, or to go into destruction. Now the word perdition in Spanish is perdir, and the word perdir is to lose, you know, lost. So they're going to be lost, meaning they're going to be destroyed in this up and coming destruction, and when Yahushua comes back and destroys them. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. Now these 10 horns represent the European Union today. When they first started, they started off as 6 nations, but then when they set up their capital building, or their building in Brussels, Belgium, they had 10 flagpoles that were erected outside, but then they started changing it into 12, and they started adding more nations to try to offset the prophecies. It says, these have one mind. See, because what's happening right now is a new world order is being established on the planet. And they have one mind because they're all in league with America, you know, to help America, right? It says, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Now the beast represents NATO and the EU, you know, together, because that's what's happening. They're slowly but surely merging together, because all of those EU nations are part of NATO. So they're in conjunction one with the other. It says, these shall make war with the Lamb. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Why? Because the Lord is going to destroy America. you know, in process of time. And he's going to use them same allies that are allied with America to destroy them. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes of nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, which is the EU, these shall hate the whore. Why? Because they're going to get tired of this hoe. You know, they've been giving them nothing but grief. And shall make her desolate and naked. So how are they going to make her desolate and naked? When they destroy this place. Because those nations that have missiles, they're going to shoot them over here. And shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Because that's the lake of fire is the judgment that the Lord set up for this place called America. For the Most High hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree to give their kingdom unto the beast, unto the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. So then once these different European nations come together to fight against America, you know, Russia is all in. They're going to kick America's ass. China's going to kick America's ass. And all them nations that have missiles are going to kick America's ass. And the state of Israel too. They're going to kick them in the ass too. You know, and then the destruction comes. It says, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. And you see America is that great city that's running and ruling everything on the planet. That's why any conflict or anything that happens in the world, they're right there, right in the midst, you know. And you know, so this has been my response to Apostle Tar's America mentioned in the Bible. You know, I'm sure that other brothers will make videos on this and expound even more on other scriptures that go into America being in the Bible, mentioned in the Bible. Contrary to what a lot of people say, but now they're starting to see it because it's inevitable, you know, and the evidence is overwhelming. So with that, I hope you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.